Guys, welcome back to Flow State. It is myself, Luke. I'm joined once again, and as always, by my co-presenter, Adam. And we are here, Adam, with episode 2. This is our third recording already, and I kind of can't believe it because it feels like only a couple of months ago that this was just an idea in the works, and now here we are. And I guess a great place to start again is just by saying thank you to everyone that has taken the time to listen, to download, to share, to comment, all the above. We really appreciate all the love you're showing us. And yeah, hopefully we can give you some more listening gold over the next hour or so with today's pod. So look, I won't delay anymore. I want to get into some chat. Hopefully we can talk about some running, maybe a bit about how our weeks have gone. So Adam, why don't you start us off as always? How's your week been? I know you've kind of been a little bit off schedule compared to what is normal.
Have been, mate. Thanks a million for the introduction. Really appreciate it. And I just want to say a happy Valentine's, mate.
I completely forgot. I did get you something, but we'll have to wait till afterwards because it's an off-camera thing, if you know what I mean.
Okay, cool. That sounds pretty good. I'm intrigued. Yep. Does it involve you in split shorts?
Look, I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying it doesn't involve me in split shorts and chocolate strawberries, but we'll have to find out. So yeah, you'll see.
Yeah, well, very happy Valentine's, mate. It's like you, the listener, I don't know if you can, if you're watching on YouTube, whatever, but you can see it's pretty dark outside. It's I've noticed it getting lighter over the last few weeks that we've been recording, so the days are definitely on the turn, and that always brings a better feeling with it, you know.
Yeah, it's like the opposite here for me as well. Like we're slowly getting darker now, and even today was a bit miserable after multiple days of 30 plus. So I've definitely got the feeling of it's coming into autumn now. So a bit jealous of you guys getting spring.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, we you mentioned that I was in a bit of a slightly different week this week with regards to my routines and everything else. So mentioned it on the first episode that we were off to London for a few days. My wife Kira, she's off for half-term holidays from school, so we had that planned for a little while. We headed off early Saturday morning and spent a few days there. We're home pretty late Tuesday night, so lots of walking, lots of steps, lots of going to different places around the city and visiting different coffee shops and eating lots of food. Oh man, the food that we had was unbelievable. We sampled Malaysian food, Lebanese, Palestinian, Vietnamese, and we also had a breakfast, a Persian breakfast that was probably the best thing that we've eaten in a long time. So we definitely sampled some great food whilst we were away. Got a couple of brilliant runs in, which I'll recap at least the Sunday run because that'll fall into that week of training when I sort of come to recap my week. But yeah, it's been a really busy week. I always feel like it's times like this, especially after, you know, heading off for a few days and being really busy and maybe not just getting as much sleep as I usually do and being out of those normal routines. It's like now I need to be quite careful especially with my recovery and with training, because when I kind of burn the candle at both ends, it's the kind of after effect from that I need to be quite cautious. If I can always get through it at the time and feel really good at the time, but it's the afterwards where I just need to be careful. So I am quite tired at the minute. Even though I've been sleeping well the last few days, I just need to sort of manage my training, manage how busy I am day to day, and just make sure that I'm sort of sleeping really well and eating plenty of food, which I have been doing. So yeah, it's been a good week, mate. What about you? You got up to anything strange or startling?
I mean, not as interesting as your week, and I definitely want to hear a little bit more. I've got a few follow-up questions to kind of lead into, but yeah, for me, a little bit kind of off kilter. I was mentioning to you off air, but my mum is visiting from the UK, which is nice. Very, very fun for my little one and for her. So I've got an 18-month-old, excuse me, and he's just like a bundle of energy, as you can imagine. So anytime he's got new people around the house, he just loves it, takes to it really well. But it has meant my work schedule has been a little bit up and down. I've still worked, but a couple of my runs have been at different times. I've been running from home a little bit more, whereas typically I kind of go during my work day, which I much prefer running at home, for the record. Like, I hate having to like go through a block of kind of 4 or 5 hours of clients and then go for a run in the area where I work, which is very industrial. It's not great. And then shower at work and get back into it. Whereas here, I can kind of finish my morning, clients, go for a run at home, or like drive home, go for a run, have a shower, and I'm done for the day. That's my ideal. But yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm feeling like very, very well recovered. Aside from the heat, like sleep has been fantastic. So I'm feeling good, and I've actually got my long run coming up again on Sunday. So getting back into some long runs. Not quite as big as yours, but pretty big nonetheless. I got a 26K coming up. So it's been a hot minute since I've done one of those. But why don't you tell me about your long run? I think you had one that kind of trumps mine.
Yeah, it was a little bit longer than planned, but I'll run you through the week. Should I?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. So I'm always quite conscious that I'm quoting the week like a week in arrears, you know. So the week that we're currently in, it's almost finished, but I'm actually talking about the week of training previously. So kicking off on Monday, the 3rd of Feb, and I've actually changed my little Strava training log that I have here to kilometers for the listener. I think most people nowadays like kilometers. I know most people that I coach, I set them up with their training in kilometers. Some people still like miles, especially here in the UK and Ireland, but I personally like miles. I keep all my training diary that you can see here. That's all written in miles, but yeah, for the benefit of you guys, I have swapped to Ks. So I've pulled it up on the screen here, and I'll run through it. So I kicked off Monday morning, sort of like an easy Monday morning run, 17.7 kilometers at about 4:15 per K. I think I felt pretty good here, and sort of towards the end got moving a little bit. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I felt good. I've written in the diary, yeah, felt good. That's the one thing I wrote below. The training was felt good. Monday evening, I got into a 45-minute easy jog. That was just 9 kilometers, and I did 5 by 20-second or 5 by 100-meter strides just on the flat tarmac at the end of that run, just getting a little bit of speed in my legs. Then Tuesday morning, I actually did a slightly longer run on Tuesday, so I did a 25K run at 4:07s, and again, I've just put in my diary that I felt really good. The pre-run carb hit definitely worked a treat, because I sort of was practicing just having the usual kind of high carbohydrate diet, but then adding in that little bit of extra carbohydrate right before I go running.
What would that be in the form of? Is that a drink? Is that gels or?
Just about to say that, actually. That was in the form of Henry Hippo sweets, which are the Lidl equivalent. The Lidl equivalent to the Percy Pigs, that in my opinion are far superior. So
classic.
That was great. That was a really nice run, and I felt brilliant. And then on Tuesday evening, I headed out for just a 30-minute run this time, because the morning run was quite long. It was, as I say, 25 Ks, which is 15 miles. It's a pretty decent run. Tuesday evening was 35 minutes, and that was including 8 by 12-second hill strides. So again, just a little bit more speed in the legs. The run itself was at like 5:45 per K, so a really slow, easy jog, and then just sprinkling in those hill strides. And I feel like that really activates the body for, one, it gets the speed in my legs, but two, it activates the body ahead of the session on a Wednesday. So that was good. That was a pretty big day. I've sort of written in the diary here that both runs I felt really good. The strides, I can always gauge how I'm going off those, because especially when you're striding uphill, you know when you kind of have that, you can put that power down, and you just feel like you're moving really well up the hill. So that was great. That was like a...
Did you say, sorry to interrupt, did you say 5:45 pace? And that was prior to the strides, yeah?
That's right, yep.
So that's a quick question just around that. Like for me at least, because a lot of my easy running is done between 5 and let's say kind of 5:20. That's not including any steep gradients. And honestly, I think if if I wasn't going up a hill, if I was just on a flat and I was running at 5:45, I'd almost find it difficult because it would kind of go against my biomechanics, right? That would feel like, I mean, I'm sure you can like kind of elaborate on this, but for me, that'd feel like almost I was shuffling, like between half walking, half shuffling.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I call it. It's a shuffle, and I actually hear a similar complaint to what you've, or not a complaint, but I kind of have heard quite a lot of the athletes that I coach say a similar thing. You know, when they're asked to run at a particular pace that's much slower than what they're used to running, they feel that it's a little bit awkward, or that like their biomechanics don't really feel great. And firstly, you got to learn to run slower, because we have to be thinking about this volume versus intensity thing. And when the volume's really high, and you're also running like some really key sessions in your week where there is bouts of running at higher intensities, you really have to manage the load and the training load. So there is days when I'll go out and I'll run really slow, like 5:45, 6-minute Ks, for the simple reason that it's added aerobic volume, and it's also allowing my body to recover. I call it like a regeneration run, where I really am regenerating. You know, I'm coming back from that jog with a much I feel more recovered than I did when I went out. And I think there's huge benefit to that, because when you compare that to, for example, Monday's easy run at 4:15 per K, it's like a completely different intensity. Yeah. So the Monday morning run's an easy run at 4:15s, but the run on Tuesday evening at 5:45s, that's recovery, it's regeneration, and it's making me feel fresher. And yeah.
Do you think like, this is me just kind of my sciencey brain kind of coming into action, but do you think because you're running twice in that day, and let's be real, you're getting quite high volumes in across your week anyway, do you think there would be the potential to then, for that second run, to look at going on the bike, if it's just kind of, if we're talking like low zone 2, zone 1, and then potentially even taking away some of that impact on the joints? It's like, obviously, yes, you're losing out on a little bit of specificity, but maybe even the elliptical or the bike, you'd probably be able to get and more easily manage that kind of aerobic zone.
Quite possibly. I mean, you have to look at a few things here. Number one, convenience. So, you know, for me to get out for a 40-minute run, door to door, straight out the front door and back home, that's really convenient for me. The second thing is, for me, when you're sitting on a spin bike, you're kind of bent over as well. So your back is taken, you know, you can tighten up kind of the posterior chain, and that, you know, I'm talking about the glutes, the hamstrings, the lower back. And then what that can do downstream or later down the line in terms of potential for like injury or added tightness. And when the body becomes really used to and adapted to running regularly, yeah, I feel like a run like that, especially at that really slow pace, it's almost a lesser load on the body than sitting on a spin bike for 45 minutes at, let's say, a similar heart rate, you know, where you want to keep it really relaxed and really slow. Now, let's say, for example, I did have tightness in my ankle or in my foot, or I had a calf that, you know, just wasn't really playing ball and there was some pain. I would either skip that run, or I would, you know, take it indoors onto, like you said, probably an elliptical. I think that's, you know, one of the things that is a lot of sort of specificity to running. There is another cardio machine that we don't have in the gym here. I can't remember the name of it now. I know Matt Fox from Sweat Elite was talking about it lately.
Yeah. Do
you know what I'm talking about?
I know the one you're talking about. I can't think of the name, and I even had to like look it up, and it's basically a more running specific elliptical.
That's right.
But it takes away all the impacts on the joint still, but you're still in that action of actually like pressing, as opposed to elliptical, which is kind of rolling. Yeah, I know what you mean.
He's been sold on that from I think I think the guy's name's Adam, actually. He's a 209. Whoever the guy is that sort of has brought this idea to him was I think a 208 or 209 marathon runner, and he does a lot of his easy volume on that, because he said not only does it sort of replicate running in many ways, but it's also he said that it's great for training his cadence.
Yeah,
and that's one of the big reasons why he uses that.
Was this the South African that he had on the the guy that broke the record off of like virtually no volume, just came in, did because I know he was on the Matt Fox did an interview with him, and I think that's the podcast that, again, I consume so many of these podcasts. I think they all kind of blend into one, but I'm pretty sure he was talking to this South African young guy and came into not Valencia, I don't think. It might have been, I might be wrong, but came into a marathon after, like, from doing virtually no volume, like as little volume as me, and then came in and broke the record. It was like a phenomenal achievement, and I think he was putting it down to a lot of his work was on, damn, I've completely forgot what it's called as well.
We forgot the guy's name, and we forgot the name of the machine. We're doing well, aren't we?
How good are we at podcasting? We are so good. We'll have to find out, but
yeah, that's how unscripted we are. But that's exactly what we're talking about. So hopefully,
yes, that's the one.
Hopefully you've taken some. But the thing is, the machine that we are talking about, I don't think any local gyms really have them. They're quite rare.
Mm-mm.
As you said, they kind of look like an elliptical without the handles, and they're a little bit lower set. But can't remember the name, can't remember the guy that uses them. So we'll move on swiftly. So that was Tuesday.
The next one.
The other reason why I run really slow on that run and really ensure that I'm recovering on those doubles is simply because I am still looking to get the quality session in on a Wednesday. So like I said last week, Wednesday, it's like my high volume quality session in the week, the marathon specific session. And I want to hit that fresh. I want to hit that, well, as fresh as possible. I don't want to be going in with tired legs and feeling crap. So that's another reason for running extra slow on those easy days. So Wednesday morning then was 5K warm-up to start, as always, and then I get into it. This time I actually trained on the treadmill. It was a really shitty day, and I decided to hit the treadmill for this session. So I also wanted to fuel quite a lot during the session, and just getting on the treadmill just made that so easy. So I did 10 minutes steady. No, am I covering the right week? Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am.
Very, very unscripted. There you go.
Yeah. You know when you just have that moment where you think to yourself, did I talk about this last week?
Yeah. What week am I in?
I did 10 minutes steady to begin. Again, just to get the body kind of firing and just to get moving. So that was started slower than marathon pace or marathon effort, and kind of got a little bit sort of progressed that on to around marathon effort towards the end of that 10 minutes. And then I took a 2-minute recovery, and then I started the kind of main set, or the main session. So I did 10 times 3 minutes on, 2 minutes float. So that was like 50 minutes of just continuous sort of tempo threshold running. 3 minutes on was started at like around 5:40 per mile and got down to about 5:30 per mile, 5:25 per mile towards the end, which is in Ks. I don't even know what that is in Ks.
It's in the threes, somewhere in the threes, but it's quick.
Yeah, I think it's like maybe 3:30s, I think. And then the offs, the float recovery, that was at about 6:30 per mile, which is, again, probably like 4-minute Ks. So that was continuous running for, like I say, 50 minutes. And as I said, it was really well fueled. I had 750 mils of isotonic sports drink. And I also had, which also contains quite a lot of carbohydrate. And I also took a 40-gram gel during that session. So yeah, for those that don't know, a float recovery basically means that you don't jog the recovery, you don't stop, you don't walk. You keep running at a very pretty steady clip. So you can't run the on sections too quick, because then you're not going to be fit enough or sort of strong enough to run those float recoveries at the right intensity. So if you get those too fast or you run too hard, you're just going to be cooked and have to, walk or slow right down in the float recovery, and then you're kind of missing the purpose of the session. So yeah, that was a pretty big day.
Yeah, it sounds it. I mean, look, another question just around, because again, I've not got to the point where I'm doing double runs, and I doubt I will for quite a while. I just don't think my volume is there. But maybe tell us how you're kind of managing those two runs in the same day. Like, what's the distance in time? Are you kind of taking any precaution between runs? Do you do any recovery? What's like fueling like? How do you get the most out of those?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the body is pretty used to doubling now. I've been doubling since my marathon block for London in 2022. Not doubling continuously since then, but in blocks, I've spent a lot of time doing double runs. In terms of time between runs, I usually run at about 8 a.m. anytime between 8 and 9, and then my second run is anytime between 4 and 5. So give or take, it's like 7 to 8 hours of time between. In between times, I'm not doing anything special. I'm working. So physically, I'm resting. And I'm eating lots of food. And yeah, just trying to turn up to my next session as fresh, or my next run as fresh and as recovered and as well fueled as possible. The other thing that I should also mention is that on the second run of the day, I do always treat that run even on an easy day, I treat the second run like a regeneration run. So the focus really is recovery. Unless I've planned something different, but generally I do the kind of more moderate or steady running in the morning. And that's all I'm feeling as well. Like if I go out and I feel terrible, I'll just run really slow in the morning as well. And then sometimes in the evening, magically you feel amazing. But generally I find like after a morning run and after a day of work and everything else, yeah, like I'm happy just to plod around in the evening. But I'm not doing anything special, mate. I am getting home, getting washed, getting fed, getting into some work and getting out for that evening run. But it's really nice at the minute because that time when I'm running for the second time in the day is, like I say, it's starting to get a bit brighter outside kind of at those times, early in the morning and sort of early evening, sort of late afternoon. So it's been nice to be getting out in the daylight in the evening time, which always helps things. So yeah, I suppose that's how I'm managing it.
I feel like being British, and again, I've not had this for so long because the last time I was back in the UK, it was back in 2022, and it was like peak winter. So when I say it's dark at 3 p.m, you know what I'm talking about. But I remember vividly, and again, it doesn't really happen. It kind of happens here, but where it's so dark for so long, as soon as you get to kind of like March, April, and it's that little bit kind of almost sunny still at kind of 4 or 5 p.m. It's like, man, you get so much kind of dopamine from it. The best feeling in the world. So I can literally envision it.
It really is. It's such a good feeling. And we're starting to see that now. On the days that there is, the rare day that there is a little bit of sunshine, we're starting to get exactly what you've just said. So that was Wednesday. Wednesday evening, we had our social run, which is just a little run that we organise in the town here with a sports store. And that's just a 5K, easy jog. We meet up together, we stick together as a group. And yeah, that's every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So I don't really count that in my weekly volume as like a training session or a run, but yeah, it's still 5Ks. And that was done at 6:58 per K pace. So just a really nice slow run. And I really enjoy that. Both the running and the kind of social aspect of it, you get to catch up with people and have a chat. We always have a cup of tea afterwards. So that was good.
I was always wondering actually, because I've seen you doing these social runs for as long as kind of we've been following each other on Instagram and so on. I was always wondering, what's kind of your affiliation? Do you work with them, or are you just kind of helping out as just a local runner trying to give back? What's the deal there?
Yeah, so pretty much the latter. I coach one of the guys that works with McKeever, and basically about a year and a half ago now, they had Hoka come in to do like an evening, where they come in and people can go up and try their shoes and so on. And the guy, the Hoka rep that was with Hoka that night, he took whoever turned up for like a jog. He was like, right, let's go for a run. You've got the Hoka shoes on, let's go for a run. And after that night, Shane and myself kind of put our heads together and said, well, why don't we do something like this in town on a weekly basis? Why don't we call it the social run and just market it as exactly that, where it's not a training session, it's not a hard run, it's not a club night or anything like that. It's just we meet up, we have a social run, and we take it from there. And at the start, it just kind of developed organically. At the start, there was about 20 of us just went out for a run, and then I was thinking to myself, if this is going to be a social run, we should really keep everyone together as a group here, do you know? So
Yeah.
I suppose we endeavour to do just that. I lead the group and sort of try to control the pace at the front, so everyone is comfortable and everyone is a group and everyone can have a chat, because if you're not having a chat, it's not social. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It kind of took legs from there, and we've been doing it now for, yeah, like I say, it'll be a year and a half pretty soon, and yeah, we enjoy it. It's the Wednesday evening routine, so yeah, it's good. So Thursday morning then, that was kind of like, I really front loaded the week this week, or last week should I say, you know, with the strides on Monday, the hills on Tuesday, and the session on Wednesday, because I knew I was heading off to London on the weekend and I wasn't sure what training would look like. So that was like I say, a bit of a front loaded week. I would usually save one of the either strides or hills for later in the week. So Thursday, I got out for a really slow, really easy. I was very conscious of needing to recover. Even though my legs felt really good Thursday morning, I got out for 14 kilometres at 4:50 per K. And then Thursday evening, just another 40 minutes at 4:45 per K. Friday then, I moved my usual Saturday session to Friday morning. Again, I did this on the treadmill. The weather was horrendous, but I also was very conscious that I was training a day earlier than I usually do. So instead of doing this session on a Saturday morning like I have been over the last few weeks, I was moving it to Friday because, like I say, we were heading off for the weekend. So I got on the treadmill to allow me to control the intensity really, really carefully. So 5K warm up, and then I did 15 minutes of tempo running, 2-minute recovery, 15 times 1 minute on, 45 seconds off, 2-minute recovery after that, and then like a 10-minute threshold run where it sort of started at the same pace as the 15-minute tempo finished, but it got progressively quicker throughout that 10-minute block. And again, I was fueling that session throughout. And yeah, that was Friday.
And what were you having? So again, I'm so curious about fueling, because I'm still trying to get like, I guess, find out what works the best for me. I haven't only done one race, but during a training session like that, how are you fueling?
So throughout that session, it was, just looking here, it was 57 minutes in total, excluding the warm up and cool down. So the actual main session was 57 minutes. So I had 750 mils of the Lucozade Sport again, which is, as I said, the isotonic carbohydrate based sports drink. So you're kind of hitting or ticking two boxes there. You're getting carbs on board, and you're also getting fluids and electrolytes. So that was what I took on during that, and that helps because when you're on the treadmill, like I'm sure you know, you're drenched in sweat. Once you start sweating on the treadmill, because the air isn't moving anywhere, or, you know, the sweat has nowhere to go, it just gathers. So you come off that treadmill pretty disgusting. And yeah, the isotonic plus lots of water, you know, really helps replace some of those fluids. And then just throughout the day after that, you're always so conscious to continue to hydrate and just really stay as hydrated as possible. So that was Friday, mate. And then I actually did get out for a Friday evening double. Usually I don't, because you know, I know I'm going to be training all weekend. So I got out for 9 kilometers on Friday evening. That was at 4:23 per K, and I've just put a little note in the diary to say felt really good. And that was a good sign because, like I say, I'd sort of front loaded the week knowing that I was heading off. So I felt good Friday evening. Saturday then I rested. We headed off. We flew from Dublin at 12 p.m, but I was just happy on Saturday just to take a recovery and a rest day. I knew it was going to be a busy weekend, and yeah, just the rest day was what the doctor ordered. And then Sunday, I like you said, had a bit of a hectic run around London. I met up with a friend from home. Shout out to Con, who lives over in London. He's been there for 5 years. He's a member of Newcastle SE here in the north, and he also is a member of Highgate Harriers in London. So he kind of splits his time between those two clubs and runs with the Highgate club in London throughout the cross country league and stuff. So it was absolutely brilliant to meet him, and I just want to say thanks to him because, yeah, he lives nowhere near where myself and Kira were staying, and he hopped on the tube early Sunday morning and probably took like a 45-minute journey to meet us where we were at, and we started at 8 o'clock. So early start, We ended up running 37 Ks at 4:16 per K pace, so 2 hours, 37 minutes of running. That was an easy run. So in terms of pace, like the intensity of that felt really relaxed, really chill. And I think we took a wrong turn at one point, and that kind of added on a little bit of it extra. So it was going to be like a 34, maybe 33K run. But yeah, we hit 37 Ks and I felt great. I fueled up the night before. I bought a couple of little porridge pots in Sainsbury's across the road. I had that and bananas and bits and pieces. And then the morning of the run, I got up. So because we were running at 8 o'clock and myself and Kira, we'd been at the show the night before and we'd been sort of in Soho for a little while. We were home. It was probably like 11:30. So I knew I wasn't going to be getting 8-9 hours of sleep, but I wasn't going to get up at 6 a.m. to have like porridge or toast or whatever. So I kind of wanted to sleep as late as possible. So when I got up Sunday morning, then I had a banana and I also had like half a bag of Haribo just to get some quick release carbohydrate into me that I knew wouldn't sort of wreak havoc in the stomach and you would keep me sort of sustained for that run. And then what I also did was I took a bottle of Lucozade Sport in my hand and just carried it for, I sipped on that for probably the first 90 minutes of that run. So I was just really conscious to keep myself well fueled throughout that and sort of not allow myself to get depleted. And then afterwards, that was the morning that we had the Palestinian breakfast. No, sorry, the Persian breakfast that I mentioned before. That was, yeah, it was absolutely delicious. So that was a class run. It was a sightseeing tour around London. We hit all the spots and we even managed to take a selfie in front of Buckingham Palace just at the exact point where London Marathon finishes. So he's running London as well in April. So hopefully we can both have a good day out there and maybe snap another photograph at the finish line. So yeah,
you're literally taking, they say that kind of when you visualize things, it helps them come into fruition, and that's what they kind of teach athletes to do, that whole visualization technique. You've basically taken that and gone, how can we make this as literal as possible? Let's actually go there and kind of replicate the final straight of the London Marathon, which is fantastic. But the only thing I guess I suppose you missed from that run, did you caffeinate beforehand?
I did, mate. So that was another little thing that I did the couple of days that I ran in London where I didn't want to get up really, really early. As in, like, I didn't want to get up an hour before I was running. I just kind of wanted to get up and get out. But yeah, I caffeinated beforehand. I went down to the hotel cafe and had a double espresso and just to put a little bit of sugar in there as well because extra carbs. And yeah, I got out the door then 15-20 minutes after that. So I actually felt great. All of my runs in London, and I'll probably recap the Monday and Tuesday runs next week. But I must admit, I felt great on all of my runs in London. And that's nearly why I'm extra conscious this week to recover, because I'm sort of waiting on it to catch up on me.
Yeah.
And I should also mention the shoe that I brought to London, because I was just thinking about that before we started recording. When I go away, I only ever bring one running shoe. I've seen people bring multiple pairs of shoes when they go away, but yeah, I just don't have the space for that. Try to pack as lightly as possible. So I used the Hoka Mac X2, which was very kindly provided to me by McKeever Sports, who we do the social run with, a couple of months back. And that shoe is just so good for doing everything in. Whether you're doing easy runs, whether you want to do some strides, whether you want to do an interval session or a threshold session, tempo running, long running, it's a shoe that can do it all. I call it a Swiss Army knife. So that was the shoe that was packed for the weekend, and it performed really well.
That's kind of, I've never worn Hoka, and I think Hoka for me, again, as someone who's never worn it, I'm kind of trying to be careful with what I say, because I'm not going to say a bad word because I've not tried them, but I feel like everyone's like, oh yeah, they do a good kind of carbon shoe. I think the Skyward X is their carbon, their race shoe, and everyone's like, yeah, it's good, but there's better out there. And I've heard similar things for some of their kind of Max series. But as far as I'm aware, is it kind of similar to the Super Blast in that it's quite well cushioned, or?
It is, but I wouldn't really compare it to the Super Blast. The Super Blast, the shoe, I don't like actually. And I bought a pair when they came out because I thought this shoe looks amazing. And the first time I put the Super Blast on my feet, I loved it. But I find the Super Blast much too soft under my foot. And lots of people kind of disagree with me. They say they feel like the Super Blast has that responsiveness and they do feel like quite snappy in it. But for me, it just feels too soft. It almost feels like when I run in it, it kind of bottoms out. And I use it just for like, I use it for just walking around in, or, you know, if we head out for a walk, I'll wear it. But I wouldn't compare the Mac X2 to that shoe. I think it's more responsive. I don't feel like it doesn't have that bottom out feeling, which, you know, and what I mean by that is just it's more responsive. It feels like it gives me a little bit more energy return. Yeah. Whereas the Super Blast, when I run in it, just whatever way I run or whatever way the shoe sort of works for me, is I just feel like I sink in a little bit and don't pop off the ground. And it's just not really a shoe that I enjoy at all. Whereas, like I said, the Mac X2, I feel like when I run in it, my legs want to turn over quite quickly. So I feel like it's kind of hard to even explain what I mean by that. You know, my legs just want to turn quite quickly. Whereas the Super Blast, I put it on, I feel like I'm slogging a bit and just like, yeah. So
I think this is one of those things that you'd only understand if you've had like a fair amount of rotation with running shoes. Because even for me, I've been running kind of half seriously now for a year and a half, and I've got probably, I think, 6 pairs total. And I know exactly what you mean, but I guess if you're someone that's only running kind of like 1 or 2, you're just not going to understand it. So for those people, you're going to put on the Super Blast and you're going to go, man, it feels fantastic. I feel like I'm walking on clouds. But yeah, like you said, it's only when you've had something that actually gives something back. Because I'd agree, I really like the Super Blast too. I've done like some big runs in it. I've done a couple of like 36k runs in it, and I've just felt great. Feet have felt great, but I completely understand what you mean, because I compare it to my other kind of shoe that I run either longer or faster runs in that's not carbon plate, and that's the Fuel Cell Rebel by New Balance. And that is for me like what you're kind of describing with the Hoka, in that kind of it feels like you can give it a little bit, but it's also relatively forgiving. But yeah, I completely get what you're saying.
Yeah, and similar to what we said last week, we mentioned about, you know, food and pre-run food and finding out what works for you. You know, there's a set of kind of principles that are a set of rules, if you want to call it that, but working within those guidelines, but then working out what works for you is important. And I think shoes is the same. Do you know, I've found that, like, I've worn the Asics Nova Blast a couple of times, and I think it's just the foam that Asics use just doesn't really work well for me.
Yeah.
I like a shoe that is a little bit firmer, which today it's quite difficult to find because shoes are just getting softer and softer. I think responsiveness is kind of the thing that I actually prefer as opposed to firmness. And that is slightly different, but it's so important to find out what works for you and you know, work with or, you know, and that is difficult because shoes are expensive and you just can't take them out for a run and whatever, but over time you can start to paint a picture. I also think, and that's the point that I wanted to make, was there's a bit of a misconception in footwear and shoes, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like a lot of people put shoes on in a store or in a shop and, you know, they feel like the shoe fits really well and feels great there and then. And I think this is where a lot of the shoe companies are kind of going. When you put a shoe on that feels really soft, like a Super Blast, you put it on in the shop and you walk around, it feels like the comfiest thing in the world. It just feels like a hug, you know, it feels amazing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to feel great after 60 minutes of running or after, you know, 45 minutes of running. And I think this is where, you know, it's important to either know exactly what you like in a shoe and what you're looking for and what you want to feel, or get the help of a professional. So head into like a shop that can fit you and even put you on a treadmill, or just like, you know, provide you with some guidance or a shoe fitting. And yeah, because it's not always the softest or the most plush or the comfiest shoe that you need. You might need a little bit more stability. You might need something that's a little bit firmer. The fit, I think a lot of people get the fit of their shoes wrong and they're wearing shoes that are probably much too small. I see that quite a bit.
Yep.
I remember years ago hearing think it was a local marathoner here, Paul Pollock, I think from memory, was saying that he had been wearing a shoe that was a size or a full size and a half too small for like 3, 4, 5 years. And then when he eventually spoke to like someone that really knew, they were like, yeah, mate, your shoes are way too small. I think it was Paul Pollock. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I had some, just to kind of piggyback on that, I had some really good advice. Like, again, I took this from you, Adam, because you obviously helped me massively when I went through my kind of first 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. And even when I got my first pair of race shoes, I went to the running company down here in Melbourne. They're based, there's one in Yarraville, who fantastic. For the life of me, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was fantastic. Like, really not trying to sell me on things, but was just like, look, I actually went in wanting the Saucony Endorphin Elite, and at the time it was like, look, we've got none. They've kind of all gone, and this was a while ago, and they're only just now kind of about to bring out number 2, which is crazy for a shoe with so much hype. But anyway, the point that I'm getting to is he tried me on the New Balance Fuel Cell. Not the Fuel Cell, the Elites. I forgot the full name of the shoe. But
the Super Comp.
That's it, the Super Comp Elite. And I tried them, and then I went straight into the Alpha Flies, and I obviously went with the Alpha Flies. They just felt like rockets. It was unbelievable. But and he was kind of saying the same thing. He was like, look, especially when it's race shoes, and what's going to happen is, you're going to be, I guess for people that are wearing kind of carbon plated shoes, for the most part, you're going to be putting quite a lot of intensity into these shoes. So you're going to be hammering the pavement, you're going to be turning the feet over quickly, and that is going to push your foot forward in the shoe over time. And so if it's too small, you are going to feel it and you're going to have issues. And B, as you're running for that long, your feet are going to swell. And this is definitely something that's more so a marathon problem. And if they are even kind of fitting like true to size, you are going to have issues, and you're going to end up with like bleeding toes. So he was like, look, man, go with half a size bigger. And I did. And it's only now that I actually went and tried the Adidas Pro 4s, which for anyone looking into those, they fit really weird. Like my Pro 4 size is US 10, whereas my daily trainers can be anywhere from US 8.5 to US 9. Then in Alpha Flies I'm 9.5. But the point I'm making is I tried on the Pro 4s, they were pretty snug, and I was like, I'm not sure that this is going to work over, because these are the ones I'm going to wear in Ballarat. I was like, man, I really don't want to have issues with shoes on my first marathon. I think that'd be like such a disappointment to get to this point and then be let down by shoes. So I was like, I'm just gonna risk it. I'm gonna go a size I've never been to, like the big 1.0. Like, man, I got baby feet. The thought of being in a 10 is crazy.
Yeah. No, I've heard that about the Adidas.
It's so, you've got to try a pair, because they are very comfortable and they are very bouncy. But yeah, if you do, like, let me know how you find the sizing, because it's odd. Very odd.
Yeah, I spoke to a lot of people in our coaching group. I think 4 or 5 people have tried the Pro 4, and they all said you gotta at least half size up. But I also think, and that was the point that I wanted to make as well, is I've found over the last number of years, speaking to people about running and coaching and shoes, a lot of people are actually reluctant to go up a size or up a half size. It's and I don't really know why. I think it's one of these mindset things where people are like I'm not a 10. I'm just not a 10, so I can't go there, whereas it's like, no, just get the shoe that fits you. Anytime I do order a new shoe online that I haven't used before, like for example last year I tried the Asics Metaspeed. I always order two sizes, so I can actually just try them on at home and really take the time to get the right fit, because I used the UK 8.5 and the UK 9, and both fitted. Like I could have got away with the 8.5, but the 9 was just better, and I decided on that one in the end. But yeah, it's one of those things you got to take the time. Like fit, comfort should be the driver, and fit, needs to be right, and those are the most important things. I remember when I started, my first ever pair of running shoes was an old pair of Hoka Clifton, And yeah, they were a full size too small, and they just crucified my feet over time, and it wasn't enjoyable at all. But listen, mate, I'd love to hear a little bit about your training week. How's it been?
Yeah, so I think last week when we spoke, I was actually telling you about the week I was in. So I've already, that was kind of from the week starting the 3rd. So I guess we're kind of in my week at the moment, but essentially not a great deal has changed, like my easy run. So I'll kind of start you back on Sunday because at the time we hadn't done that, but I started out with a, I think it was 5 by 2K workout which was just under my LT1. So that was, I want to say it's around 405, 410 per K. And it felt great. Like Sunday morning is typically when I am kind of my most rested, because Saturdays, all I do is like an upper body session in the gym, and I eat and I avoid stress and I'm quite relaxed. So, I get some caffeine in me. I don't eat too much before my morning runs. I think I mentioned last week, I just have a really sensitive stomach, so I've just got to be so careful. So I literally had a scoopful of cluster dextrin mixed with some electrolytes, and that kind of keeps me going. And so yeah, I did 3K warm up into the 5 by 2K with like a minute standing in between reps, and then 3K cool down. Like, felt fantastic. Just flying. It's so easy for me to kind of hold those paces without my heart rate kind of going anywhere it shouldn't be going.
Yeah, and maybe next week or in one of the weeks, sorry, look, we should actually cover the terms that we're talking about, like LT1,
100%.
LT2, tempo, yep, threshold. What do all of these different terms mean? Especially for the listener, I think it's really important that we do try to cover those at some stage.
Yeah, maybe next week we should do that, because I feel like we can easily like smack down half an hour just going into terminology. But yeah, we'll definitely make a point of that, because I guess they are very important to know. And yeah, I'm hopefully going to get my LT1 and LT2 tested. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks to months. So that'll be a good kind of precursor to that as well. But yeah, so Sunday went nicely, and then into Monday, which was my kind of standard. I do actually have a lower body gym session. So I do my run kind of mid-morning. I did 10K, which is super easy. Again, looking around that kind of 5:10 pace plus or minus, and then finish off with 6 hill strides, which again, that's, like you said, that's a really good gauge for how I'm feeling on the day. I typically find that because that 10K isn't particularly taxing, the first 1 or 2 strides are maybe a little bit kind of like firing up the engine, getting the dynamo going, and then by the last ones, they're just getting quicker and quicker, and I'm feeling better as they go on. And I think that one from memory was quite a good day. They were moving quite nicely. Tuesday, that's my treadmill run for the week. I keep that pretty consistent just because it works with my schedule. Man, it was hot. I think it was early 30s, and I didn't have a fan. So again, I probably lost upwards of like 1.5 to 2 liters, which can be equated to kilograms of sweat. So yeah, I did. That was 6 times. It was either 6 times a mile, or maybe it was even, no, that one was 4 minutes. That was 8 by 4 minutes. So I did 3K warm up, 8 times 4 minutes at, I think that was 4:05, if not 4 minutes. No, that was 4 minutes, definitely. I should have this up again. This is unscripted.
Is that an LT2 session? Like
that was, yes. So that was probably my most intense, or the one I find hardest at least.
Yeah, so the upper end of your threshold.
Yeah, it's below my LT2. Sorry, I think me and David have kind of estimated that my LT2 is probably around the 350s somewhere. So this is kind of it's above my LT1, but not quite at LT2. because they'll change in paces and duration. So this one was 4 minutes per K. So it's basically 8 by K essentially, just using time as the metric. And that was the same thing, come to mention it. So I again, kind of tangenting here, but I was like, I want to get a gel in, but I want to experiment with like getting it in during the run slowly. So I actually mixed that gel with some electrolytes. Now, hear me out. I had the bottle of electrolytes. I squeezed the gel in. I shook it up a little bit, and I kind of sipped that during my warm up, so that once I got to my my actual reps, I was A, hydrated, but B, had the kind of carbs going in me, because it was just maltodextrin. So obviously the run's not really long enough to need fructose. Cluster dextrin, same thing. If I had it like when I was warming up, by the time I finish, that's when it'd probably be starting to kick in. So maltodextrin just straight in. So and that really worked. Like I felt better as the reps went on, and by the last one I was like, yeah, I could easily go for probably 2 more at the same relative intensity, and I just felt brilliant coming off the back of that. So yeah, that was Tuesday, and then Wednesday's just a standard 12K, no strides, but I do have a little upper body session in the morning again, just to keep some volume in so I don't lose what little muscle I have left, which, spoiler alert, isn't very much at all. So I like to keep a few sets in here and there, just so I have a little bit of muscularity still. And then Thursday, that's 10K easy again with 6 strides, but this time they were flat, so no hills, just kind of on a nice straight. But this was a bit rough because we're talking again around the 30-degree mark, but it was like damn windy. So
I think that's probably the worst combination.
It's so much worse. And
heat plus
again,
wind it's brutal.
Because I've got my mum and her partner over from the UK. They kind of, I get back from the run, they're like, oh, how bad was the heat? And I was like, look, honestly, I'm used to the heat at this point. Like, most of my runs are in hot weather. Like, it's hot. It's the wind when you're getting smashed with this kind of like, it's just this gross feeling, especially when you're going up a hill and you've got a headwind.
Just feels like you're in an oven.
Yeah, and I definitely wasn't doing my normal pace for those. I think I averaged about 5:20, which, yeah, look, it's at the end of the day, my heart rate is always going to go up in those kind of conditions. And I do wear the heart rate monitor chest strap for all of my runs, because I do like that metric. But for this, I didn't even look at it. I only looked at it after the fact, 'cause I'm like, it's just going to play with my head if I'm looking at heart rate, pace. I'm just going to run it to feel, try and keep it as kind of cruisy as I can, and be done with it. And then even with the strides at the end, I did it away from the headwind. So I purposely had it as a tailwind, and that was a little bit more comfortable.
That's a good point to note, actually. Anytime that I'm prescribing strides for athletes, I think strides are arguably the most beneficial thing you can do, as long as you're doing enough running. One thing that I always tell people with strides is avoid doing them into the headwind if you can at all, because you're really not trying to tax your cardiovascular system. In fact, you're not trying to tax your cardiovascular system at all. We're not looking like an aerobic response, or we're really not even looking at an anaerobic response, really, because you could argue it's not really long enough to stress that. But what we're looking is that like biomechanical benefit, and just get your body used to running fast with as relaxed mechanics as you can. So anytime there is a really, on a really windy day, I always do my strides with the wind on my tail. And that just allows me to move fast without feeling like I'm grinding or sort of working against nature. And I think that's an important, an important point to talk about, is that, the purpose of strides isn't to tax that cardiovascular system. And you should always take that full recovery between strides, like whether it's 10 minutes or whether it's 90 seconds, whatever it is, as long as you're not doing a stride and then going 20 or 30 seconds later, because you got to squeeze them in, you're better spreading them out and doing them over a really long period of time, because, the purpose of them is quite different to other training sessions.
Even hills, like the way I envision it is, if you're going like into a hard headwind, that is essentially what a hill is doing. Like, yes, your biomechanics are going to be slightly different, but in terms of that resistance, like it's like having a parachute behind you pulling you back. So yeah, for sure. If it's strides and just like flats you're looking to do, like stay away from the wind, because you want to be able to turn the legs over as quickly as possible. And you just can't do that if you're running into wind. So yeah, really good point. And I guess that brings me then to today. So it's Friday and I've actually just posted what I did today in like a little training reel on Instagram.
I've just seen that actually, yeah.
Yeah, it was actually very different to what I'm used to. So usual kind of my standard warm up is 3K prior to a workout. So I did that. And then it was 10 minutes at my just under my marathon pace. So this is 4:10 and my kind of goal marathon pace is about 4:15. And again, that 10 minutes at 4:10, like that was beyond comfortable. I finished and I was like, man, was this programmed correctly? Because that was almost too easy, but it's because I got a long run on Sunday coming up. So it was more to just get me used to that pace. But then after that, I had a little bit of a break and I went into 2 sets of 5 times 30-second hill sprints. And yeah, these were kind of the ones I took most seriously compared to like strides, because I wanted to be able to like really get the most out of them. And then between those 2 sets as well, I had a good 5 minutes rest. Like I find that between the individual sprints, my heart rate does come down quite quickly, which is a really good sign. But then like by that last one, the last kind of, let's say I'm doing 5 in a group, by 4 and 5, I'm feeling the lactate start to build up and I'm like, yeah, it's there. So you need that kind of, that 5 minutes between them to be able to clear some of it away and then go again and get good quality. But this was actually, going back to shoes, this was a really good test because I wore the Pro 4s for my obviously not the warm up, but I wore them for the 10 minutes and then again for the sprints. And it's nice because I never really like, these are the shoes I'm planning on wearing for the marathon. So it's like doing them for the 10 minutes or the progressive tempos makes sense. But then it's like, okay, let's see what they can do over a 30 seconds stride. And I was surprised at how kind of quick I felt. I was like, man, I thought this is really where the alpha flies would come into their own. But no, in all fairness, the Pro 4s, they were snappy. They were good, especially up a fast hill.
Yeah, I almost feel like that shoe would probably perform better than the Alpha Fly over those short sprints, because the Alpha Fly is quite clunky. It's quite high stack, and I do find over really short, fast reps, yeah, you kind of don't. They just don't feel as smooth or as like you say, as snappy is kind of the word that I would use. I know, like when I'm at those sort of moderate intensities, steady intensities, that's when a shoe like the Alpha Fly really comes into its own. I almost actually feel like half marathon pace. Well, I wore the Alpha Fly 3 in Copenhagen in September, and I got that race wrong from a pacing perspective and from an intensity perspective, and that might have fed into this feeling, but I actually feel like that shoe didn't feel that smooth at half marathon pace. But then I think I kind of have this, I think my opinion is probably biased slightly because I didn't have a good race, and it's really easy to say a shoe didn't feel very good when you didn't have a good race, and similarly it's really easy to say a shoe felt amazing when you had a good race. But I just can remember like 5, 6, 7 kilometers into that race just feeling like I just wasn't moving as well as I would have wanted to, or as I felt like I was just maybe, I don't know, I was thinking about the shoe a bit too much underfoot, whereas you slow down to like marathon pace or even just slightly slower at those like moderate steady intensities, the Alpha Fly just feels so smooth and so good underfoot. It almost it almost just does the work for you. So I can see how that Pro 4, I haven't worn it yet. I've worn the Pro 3, which I love, but I can see how that Pro 4, just with that snappy feeling, would feel really good on those short, fast hill reps.
Yeah, again, as someone who's only ever worn for actual runs at least, I've only ever worn the Alpha Fly 3 and the Pro 4. Yeah, it just feels like, because it is so much softer, the Pro 4, you're like, oh, this is definitely, doesn't feel like a sprint shoe, whereas the Alpha Fly is quite stiff. But you're right, I think the stack height does make a big difference. And yeah, I'm kind of getting more and more excited to actually use the Pro 4 for the marathon, and hopefully not have any issues. It's hard to tell because I've literally only worn it for one progressive tempo, which is about 40 minutes long, and then for today's session, I probably won't wear them again because I don't want to put too many Ks in them prior to Ballarat. Whereas Alpha Flies, I've got a quite a used pair, and I've got another fresh pair ready to go that is kind of just for whenever I need it. So I'm probably more inclined to wear those for training sessions. But that's pretty much my week, getting ready for a 26K out on Sunday. So looking forward to it. And
is there any paced work inside that, or is it just 26Ks as you feel?
Yeah, it's basically to feel. I probably won't even look at pace again. This is what my coach David was saying to do. He's like, look, just the focus is on getting the Ks in the legs, because I haven't done a run that big in a couple of months now. So I probably won't look at pace. I won't look at heart rate. I'll just go out and run to feel. I'm guessing that feel, just going by how my long runs used to go, is it's probably going to be around like the 450s. Because that's kind of, it's not slow, but it's also not like fast for me. That's sitting right in that kind of easy, tickling, moderate, but very, very kind of sustainable. So that's how I'm kind of presuming it will go. And I'm going to experiment potentially with no caffeine before, because I want to try and not need to go to the toilet during the run.
Okay.
As we all know, caffeine is quite a strong diuretic, and I need to practice, man. So, and unless something goes wrong and I have a bad sleep, I probably will go no caffeine.
Yeah. Okay. Good idea. And I mean, it does take caffeine about 30 to 35, 40 minutes to kind of peak in the bloodstream.
Isn't it an hour?
So, is it an hour?
It's an hour, I believe. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So it's actually quite a bit longer. And this is where people get, and this is another episode for another podcast, when we talk about kind of intra-race fueling. So actually taking on board caffeine gels, for example, during a marathon, is that you shouldn't wait until your last gel to pop the caffeine, because that caffeine ain't going to be hitting your system until after the marathon. And you want to benefit from that kind of that lesser perception of fatigue. You want to benefit from that during your final miles of the marathon. And if you take it too late, you're not going to gain that benefit. You might get some placebo, but it won't get the full benefit. But yeah, timing of caffeine is something that's really key. And again, you got to take time and experiment what works for you. We'll not go into it too much, but touch wood. I found kind of the timing of caffeine that works for me, it's definitely a performance enhancer if done correctly.
For sure. And I think, like, again, we can go into this in another podcast, but in the meantime, for anyone who's interested, Jonah Rossner on Instagram is a fantastic resource if you're ever wanting to know about kind of timing for A, fuel, but B, caffeine as well, because this guy I don't know his background. I know he's worked with professional NFL teams, but he's big into the endurance space now. And I think he was saying with his caffeine gels, so he'll pop one, I think it's at about 20 minutes into a marathon, and then again at about 50 minutes, so that he's got one that's peaking around halfway, and then one that's peaking with about half an hour to go. And I think that's probably the way to go. But like you said, I think it all comes down to that kind of N of one, just experiment, find what works. Like for me, I haven't had any source of caffeine other than basically coffee for the longest time. So I'd be very reluctant to try caffeine gels, because I'm just, again, I'm not sure how I'd react. Because at the end of the day, caffeine's a diuretic, whether you're having it from a gel or you're having it from coffee. So I kind of presume it would have the same effects. So I think I'll just have a go going like raw dog, see how we get on. And I'm sure we'll be fine. I think it would just be actually getting into it that's a little bit more challenging, because once your heart rate's up, you're fine.
And that's the other thing about caffeine is that it also does put the heart rate up a little bit. So you kind of have to be careful with that. I actually noticed it on my session on Wednesday. I had 2 coffees. We have a coffee machine here at home. And I had 2 pretty strong coffees on Wednesday morning. And I noticed that my heart rate versus perception of effort was just about 3 or 4 beats per minute higher. So I felt absolutely brilliant, but I could see the heart rate just going up a little bit, and I would just put that down to the caffeine and or probably maybe just having a really busy few days. So the body was in a slightly higher state of stress, but it's being aware of those things and kind of managing the rest of your week all around that, and that's what I said at the start of the podcast. I have to kind of be careful now because I've been away. I know that my routine has changed, and that's added load on the body. And I think people sort of underestimate what stress actually is. And stress doesn't necessarily mean like anxiety or feeling like you're stressed at work because your boss is on your back. Stress is travel. Stress is being out of your usual routines. Stress is a whole host of things that maybe people don't give it credit for. So it's being conscious and aware of all those things and kind of making good decisions in your training and your lifestyle around all of that,
Yeah, all stress is stress at the end of the day, whether it's coming from training, whether it's come from lack of sleep or psychological stress. It's having the same effect on the body at the end of the day. So you definitely can't ignore that. As I'm getting stressed out as I'm attacked by, bro, I've
seen it hanging around for like the last 20, 30 minutes.
Dude, it's coming after me. I don't know where it is. It's waiting in the wings somewhere. But
so for those that can't see, there's some form of creature floating around Luke's head, and I think it wants to have a word on the podcast with you, mate.
It's definitely it's next week's guest actually trying to get in on things. Now, whatever they say about Australia is true. There's all kinds of like creatures that just try and get into your house. Yes, it's definitely not like that in the UK. But
you know what, mate? See, just quickly before we head off, I think it's important that we touch on something that happened last night in Leuven in France. There was a new 1 mile record set by the one and only Jakob Ingebrigtsen.
Yes, I did see this.
Yeah, 3 minutes and 45 seconds. He beat Jared Nagus's time by over a second. Jared ran that last week.
Literally 7 days, isn't it?
So Jakob smashed it last night. It was just an outstanding performance. He went through his first kilometre in 2 minutes 19, which is unfathomable. It's a different gravy, as we would say here in Ireland. So yeah, incredible. And then also just before, as I say, we maybe talk about that some more, is we had the local Armagh 5K here last night, which is quite a famous race here on my doorstep, like 20 minutes from home here. There was a new under 16 world record in 13:35. He smashed Jakob Ingebrigtsen's 5K under 16 world record by Sebastian Larstad of Sweden. And on the interview afterwards, he was asked, about the Norwegians and so on. He says, "Yeah, we don't hate the Norwegians, but we strongly dislike them." So I thought that was pretty. He was pretty raw. You can tell he hasn't had much media training, which is great because that's what we want in the sport. So yeah, you can tell he has that 16-year-old ego that's just bursting. But 13:35 for a 16-year-old. He actually led the race for quite a while. It was really cool to see him just taking it out at the front, and was caught by Andrew Coley and another guy. But Andrew Coley ended up winning the race in 13:33. In a new course record in Armagh, there was 3 athletes who smashed the previous course record. There were 24 runners under 14 minutes. And listen to this one. There were 157 lads that broke 15 minutes. So, yeah, a completely stacked race in Armagh. If you get the chance to go onto YouTube and watch the footage, it's to watch them streaming over the line at the end is out of this world. And as I said last week, there's also the ladies open 3K race, which was a brilliant race to watch as well. And then the open men's 3K race, which is just a race that kind of anyone can enter, which again was a brilliant race to watch. So yeah, some outstanding running both on the world stage and the local stage here in Ireland last night.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think I've actually got a bit of a soft spot for the Norwegians. For like fun fact, I've been learning Norwegian on Duolingo for like 3 years now. After I went I went on a little holiday back in 2022 after me and my partner got really into watching the show Vikings.
Okay.
And so we actually went to visit Norway, and I got into doing Norwegian on Duolingo. I even had some formal lessons, and so I've got like a really big soft spot. There's that fly again, my word. I've got a really, really big soft spot for the Norwegians. They're a very they're very like straight to the point people, but they're very like warm and welcoming. Especially if you try and speak Norwegian to them, especially in Oslo, they really took to that quite nicely. But yeah,
That's really cool, man.
Massive running.
You're a man of many talents.
I try my best. Jack of all trades, master of none, and all. But yeah, no, I do try my best.
Good on you.
But yeah, look, we have now. Go on, sorry.
No, go on.
No, I was just going to say we've been recording for about 70 minutes now, and I just was wondering if there was anything you wanted to finish up on before we let the people.
No, mate, I think that's it. Have you got anything nice planned for your Valentine's weekend?
I mean, Valentine's Day is come and gone now. So my Valentine was spent with you, Adam. And honestly, don't tell my partner this. She's in the other room, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So
me and you both, man.
Now, look, my Chelsea are playing tomorrow morning. I'm going to watch that. That's always a nice thing when they play at a reasonable hour, so I can get up and watch the boys play. And then I think we'll just kind of see where the weekend takes us. No major plans apart from big run on Sunday. But yeah, get some food. My life revolves around food most of the time.
Me and you both.
Yeah, man. What about you?
Sounds great. No, I think I'm going to skip out the sort of the faster, shorter session this weekend, and instead there's a bit of a group coming down to Craigavon here where we live, like a bit of a 2:30 marathon group coming down for a progression run on Sunday. So that's going to be a pretty fast long run this Sunday with a big pack of athletes. So that should be fun on Sunday morning. Apart from that, mate, that's really it. Happy to have a pretty chill weekend after a really busy one last weekend. I should also just say you talked about food there, and just before we do finish up, I was I'm absolutely sick of buying expensive and terrible food in airports, and we grabbed this Palestinian wrap in a little place just by where we were staying in London on Tuesday before we left at I don't know, it was 2:00 in the afternoon. We grabbed this, we had this wrap, and it was delicious. So I was like, Kira, I'm going to grab another one here for the airport because, as I say, I'm sick of spending too much money on terrible food in airports. I put it in my bag. I got it double wrapped so it didn't nothing leaked or anything in the bag.
Yeah.
But when I was going through security, of course, then my bag got flagged, and
absolutely, man.
It got searched, and the guy was like, "Yeah, it's this wrap that has caused the search here." So I thought he was about to take it off me, but he was pretty good, and touch wood, I got the wrap through security, and I enjoyed that on the plane on the way home. So
I was a little bit worried. Yeah. I was like, please tell me you got your wrap, bro. Nothing beats a naughty Palestinian wrap on the flight home.
Yeah, falafels and hummus and all that stuff. It was
oh man,
it was class. So
give it to me.
Yeah, glad I got that through, but that was it. So yeah, mate, listen, it's been a pleasure speaking to you again. As I say, we've recorded for a bit longer than usual today, but it's been nice as always, and I'm looking forward to getting out the door for a run this morning.
Yep, looks like an all right day. But yeah, guys, thank you so much again for tuning in. Again, we're going to start posting some sporadic kind of not Q&As but polls, because we want your feedback on what we should post on the podcast as well. I know we spoke about kind of giving you some terminology, and maybe we'll speak a little bit about kind of some of the points we've mentioned today in more details. But if there's anything you want to hear us talk about, please send in your ideas and your feedback, because it does help us heaps. But otherwise, as always, kind of Instagram, socials, YouTube, all these links will be in the show notes, along with Strava's as well. I know Adam doesn't post a heap, but all my runs posted on Strava if you want to have a look. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in, Adam. It's been great chatting. So we will speak again this time next week, and looking forward to catching up with everyone soon.